Welcome back to the Creativ Rise Podcast, everybody. So glad you are here today with us. We have got a very exciting guest on today's show, Dustin Cressey. You might hear us refer to him as Dusty. He goes by both. He's a good friend of the show, good friend of Creativ Rise. He was in the third round of the Creativ Rise Mastermind back in 2019. What has happened to his life and his business since then is quite phenomenal. He's doing completely different stuff with completely different people in a really cool way, and he is stoked about the vision of his life right now and what's all coming together because he's chosen to go all in on running his own creative business. And so this episode's all about us asking questions, probing him with questions on how he did it, some of the things that have been helpful for him. He's experienced about 85,000 followers in the last year of growth on Instagram alone, which has obviously led to some revenue for his business. So we ask him lots of questions about that. It was an awesome episode.
Yeah, Dusty's awesome. You're going to love all the tactical stuff as well as just the mindset around what does being a six-figure creative look like in the personal brand space? What does that look like growing your socials right now in an age where it feels like nobody's growing? It's not true, and he lays it out for you, so you guys are going to really enjoy this. Here's Dusty.
What's up, Dusty? Welcome to the Creativ Rise Podcast, my friend. First timer on the show. So glad you're here. And dude, I don't even know. We're gonna go into rapid fire, but there's so many things I want to talk to you about.
We've known Dusty since 2019.
Yes,
like literally right at
2019 and 2018.
But
2019.
Well, you went through the Creativ Rise Mastermind in 2019, but I mean, we knew of each other before that, so. It's been a while. I like to say Dusty's one of those pre-COVID dudes in the Creativ Rise community, you know, because there's like, I feel like that's how people see the world now. It's like pre-COVID, post-COVID stuff. So Dusty's a pre-COVID Creativ Rise community member. Dude, welcome to the show. So happy to have you on today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm stoked to chat. It's been a little while since we connected, so
I know, man. I know. We've been following each other. I feel like I've been following you step for step, but I'm excited to actually like dive into what's been going on underneath the hood. Yeah. Because you've had a lot of change in the last 3-ish years. You've had a lot of change in some aspects of your life in the last year. I can't wait to chat all about it. So we always start the show, as you know, with some rapid fire. So right off the bat, give us some quick answers. Where are you from?
I am from Alberta, Canada, more specifically living in Calgary currently.
Awesome. And then, Dusty, what is your creative business? When someone asks you what you do, what do you say?
I still don't have this elevator pitch completely down pat, but I have a personal social media account where I work with brands and tourism boards for my lifestyle, but I also work with brands and tourism boards in a commercial aspect, creating photos and videos that you might see in commercials or on their website. And stuff.
Totally.
That's
so an outdoor travel, commercial, and personal brand photographer. Awesome. Super cool.
Absolutely.
And then how long have you been in the creative industry for?
This is something that I still can't really figure out because I've been in the creative world for so long, but in terms of like being the business wise, I would say like around 4 or 5 years, whatever that is, would be to 2019 would be the time where I started ramping up.
Yeah,
awesome.
Totally.
And then Dusty, when did you hit full time? When were you like, okay, this is good. This is something that's sustained me. This is my full-time business.
I think I'm coming up to 2 full years here in about August, September time this year. So not totally long, but I was still working around 6 months for the like 3 years leading up to that, doing freelance.
Yeah, we'll get into that because that's a cool story.
Your story's awesome.
But last little rapid fire question here. I'm putting you on the spot. What's a flop you've had in your business? We need to just humanize you for a second because a lot of the stuff we're going to talk about in the show is going to be like pumping you up, and so it should be, but just to level yourself right now because you're just normal like the rest of us. So what's a flop you've had in your business that maybe something didn't go as well as you thought it should?
Or you dropped a camera, broke a camera, fell into a water fountain with a camera, whatever it is.
That's a crazy one. No, haven't had any major business flops where I'm like working with a client and have a extreme issue with that. But I would say like I was like on social for like 7 or so years without almost zero success. So like it's not necessarily a flop, it's a learning curve, but like that was a huge amount of time where then all of a sudden I had some exponential growth. But like that's a big time crunch, like where I just had no success basically. So it was a lot of learning.
Yeah.
I think that's the most relatable thing you've probably said. You will say on this podcast
is that's
trying
so
at socials and nothing working. Totally.
Yeah. So Dusty, why don't we start there? So I want to talk about socials a little bit more in depth later on in the episode. So for everybody listening, if you're into that, make sure you stay tuned. Listen to this entire episode. Dusty's going to have so much value for you guys. But Dusty, what are some like wins you've had in the last year? Because I know, like you just mentioned, you've had some exponential growth in some areas of your business or your brand in the last year. Why don't you describe a few of those so people understand some context around some of the wins that you've had?
Yeah, totally. So a little bit outside of directly being social or monetary amounts, I think like finding that goal for myself and what I actually want with the lifestyle, including my business. So whether that's income amounts or like the actual lifestyle, like being able to travel freely and also like pick and choose the jobs that I want, I think is a huge major win. But also letting go of ego on social, because social doesn't really owe us anything. It's like a tool for us all to like use and adapt with. And I think some people get caught up with not wanting to adapt that because like, oh, Zuckerman is controlling everything. Like, but in the end of the day, that's their business. So I think something huge for me was just like letting go of that and like maybe doing something that I wouldn't typically do in terms of the content format, and adapting what I want to do in terms of a vision to fit that. And that has allowed for some major success, going from like 15K or so like last April, May, now to like just around 100K, just crossing that mark. So that to me was like two major things that I've learned. And they kind of work together to allow me to get to that like kind of place.
And just around 100K, as in like, I think you're like 100 followers away or something from it, right? You're like really close.
Yeah, well, I've crossed it and then I've went back over, so I just have to get back on the gas.
I love it.
That's
I love
awesome.
it. Okay, so I want to highlight what you just said, because I think that's super important. You said the biggest win for you so far this past year was actually getting clarity on, one, that everything you're doing is possible to give you the lifestyle you want, figuring out how what you're currently doing to make money is giving you the lifestyle you want, and then obviously you've had some really good social growth after 7 or 8 years, like you mentioned, where you didn't see a ton of growth, and then this year there's been some exponential growth. So why don't we jump straight into the social stuff right now for a second, because I'm sure people are thinking about that. So Dusty, you went from like 15K to 100K on just Instagram alone in the last year, and I'm going to guess that has benefited your business. Yes or no?
Yes, totally. Alongside those goals that I wanted, I've always wanted to be able to share my lifestyle and like show that this is possible. And like when I was at 15K, I wasn't able to like really make that dream lifestyle apparent because like I'm still figuring that out.
Yeah.
But there's, so, okay.
Yeah. So that's great. But that's what I mean. Like, as you grew your social, obviously, as you get more influence, as you get more awareness, brands are trying to do the same thing. So if a brand's going, I need more influence and awareness, they go to you and go, well, Dusty knows how to get it. We should think about working with him, right? So it's all, growing your social is not the be all end all. I'm sure you would agree with that, but it is a phenomenal tool to give you some momentum in your business. So how in the world did you go 85,000 followers in a year practically? How did you grow that much? Because there's so many creatives out here, photographers, filmmakers, people with personal brands like yourself who are going, man, it's not working. So what has worked for you?
Yeah, I'm just going to touch on the point that I remembered from before.
Perfect.
It's like figuring out what I wanted to do on social and sharing that, and then actually implicating it into being able to do it and to grow. And now I've got to the point where businesses, like you said, have reached out. Like I have currently a GMC Canada partnership. So things like that, which I wouldn't have been able to do in terms of a personal business. So like that was a goal for me. So that has allowed that aspect of my business to grow alongside still the skill that I have of doing freelance. But in terms of the actual implications of what I was doing on social, is just being very self-aware of what was working and what wasn't. And then I'm sure you have know of Alex Hormozy, which is a massive business guy on the YouTube world right now, and just a crazy businessman. But he had one piece of content where it was like talking about the actual amount, or the amount of input that you actually have to do is sometimes like 100x what you might think. And I think often when you're starting out on social, you're just putting out one piece of content a week, which to some people might be a little bit higher than your capacity at the time. But like in all honesty, these days on social with millions and I don't know, maybe billions of people on there, you're having to show up so much. So when Reels really were popping off, and it was probably almost 2 years into the Reels thing, and I had never really started with it. But then I was like, I'm just going to start doing it. I started letting go of my ego, like things that weren't working, just starting to put up and test out, and then sticking with the things that we're working on Reels, and then also still keeping up with photos. So I went from doing maybe 1 to 2 pieces of content a week to doing like 9+ a week, which is more than 1 a day, which basically after about 2 months, I started seeing the exponential growth and it just kept on increasing. Like it went from being, maybe gain 100 followers a day. And then at some points it went all the way up to like 1,500, 2,500 a day. And it, over the time period when you would see like the 3-month or 90-day analytics, it was absolutely insane at the time. But I caught the wave, and then I stayed on the gas until basically I got into shore. So when you find those things that are working, whether in every aspect or every niche, there's going to be different things that are going to work. But when you find something that works, take that and continue to do that, I guess.
Yeah.
And social is a game. Not everyone might have the goal to like be a content machine, but if that is your goal to be on social, and whether it's for your freelance business, commercial agency business, or anything, like find those things that work for you and then stick with it over the long term. I think
That's super cool.
that was really the big thing.
That's awesome. So Dusty, let me dive into like content strategy questions. So what for you didn't work? And then what for you hits almost every time? Like what were you doing before that was like, it's keeping me stuck. I'm not getting views. I'm not getting growth, versus like, what's the content strategy for you that actually causes growth?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think this is has to be, again, self-awareness is super key because things are changing constantly, and also awareness to the entire space. For me, like I started out just being a beautiful type of land, not that my work's beautiful, but like trying to
your work's beautiful. You can take that. Your work's beautiful.
I'll take a compliment, but inspire people to get out there. And so now I think alongside just putting out more consistency is also including my personal opinion, and also just speaking to a lot of these different aspects of life and the experience that I'm having doing that. So alongside sharing these beautiful pieces of imagery, or so somebody might call them beautiful, and that was working really well. But now sharing just like a very beautiful or well thought out single shot reel on Instagram doesn't seem to be performing the same way. And I'm still actually in a new phase of figuring out what's going on. I let off the gas for like a couple months. It was a bit of a burnout. Not really a full burnout, but I mean, in terms of like, it was a lot for those maybe almost a year time where I was putting out that much content. So again, I'm back in that step one where I'm trying to figure out what is working. I do think that following what other people on the pages doing can also be to a detriment. Before I had this like growth phase, I was trying to watch what other people are doing and having success, and that wasn't working for me. But as soon as I fell into my own lane and actually stuck to the stuff that in my gut and in my mind felt really authentic to me, also started to play a huge role in that and success.
Yeah, I love that.
That's awesome.
And what I really want to highlight, Dusty, is that you said you grinded for about 2 months doing 6 to 9 posts a week, which is quite a bit. You said more than one a day. Yeah. And then you started to see the curve start to go up, which is really cool, because most people, and I want you to talk to this, most people don't give themselves enough time, and they don't commit hard enough for long enough. And because of that, they never start to see the exponential curve in their followers, or maybe it's a revenue thing, maybe it's a client thing in their business, maybe even it's just a fulfillment thing in their business, right? So talk to me about, you said you did social for 7-ish years and it never really hit. And you've now obviously had a very different year, having like 85,000 new followers in a year because you committed. Talk to me about why that commitment was so important. I'm assuming you would say that that was a huge piece to the success you've had this past year.
Yeah, I definitely think it's been a huge piece, but like, I think the ultimate success is that I got through the 7 years to get to this point, or whatever it is. Maybe I wasn't going as full time, but like the ultimate success to me is that I'm still here and doing it. Like now I'm coming up to 2 years almost full time, and I've had this social success in the same year. Well, hopefully this is going to continue and keep growing. I think ultimately, like, just putting in that commitment over time, and then finally having some, like, maybe this is my break for this time, but now I'm going back into like a growth and strategy phase. So I think that is so important to remember. And like, even for talking about outreach or increasing your social posts, is like just getting those numbers up and figuring out a strategy that works for you. And like ultimately the consistency over time. And hopefully it doesn't take you like 7 years on social. Maybe if you put better strategy and all that into it, it's not going to take you as long, but those to me are like my ultimate takeaways from it.
Yeah. And let's talk about the side of socials that a lot of people are just like, I just hate spending time on my phone. I hate creating content, like whatever it is. Like, I'm not into socials is what a lot of people say. How have you figured out how to actually day-to-day work on content or do things so that it feels sustainable for you? Like, what are some tips or tricks that you have that have made it feel more seamless and that you don't hate your life trying to grow on socials?
I think you have to hate your life for a long time doing social,
Great.
probably, until you figure it out that you have to do it better. In all honesty, I think me and Joey have a lot of ways, and like we have to put systems in place in order to have a lot of productivity. And I still haven't got to that point. In all honesty, I'm still like just pulling up something that I know, and I have a really good brain catalog of all the content that I'm shooting, and I'm making sure that I have consistency in shooting so that I have something to pull from. But I don't have like one single Dropbox or a Notion template where I have ideation or something like that to do that. I'm honestly still going with the old school thing of like pulling content from my camera roll, editing in Visco if I'm using iPhone stuff, or spending like an afternoon once a week to get some content from off my computer if it takes that, or editing photos. But it's just like all over the place. And like, I'll be totally honest, like that's something that I want to improve on, and that everyone talks about, and having a better strategy, but that has worked for me up until this point. Like, so saying that, oh, I don't have a good strategy, I don't have this, doesn't have to be like the end all be all. Like, you can still make it work, but I do definitely recommend trying to figure out a way to plan a couple days a week, or afternoon here or there, and then have a good folder system so that you can pull easily.
Yeah,
For
I
sure.
love that. So I love that you said, you know, it's maybe a little bit more sporadic than some people might have answers for. And I like that, because what
It's
I'm hearing you
encouraging.
saying that is that anyone can do it. You don't have to be some crazy, like, over analyzing management freak that's just
Guru.
like super obsessed with that stuff. If you are, I'm sure you're, like Dusty said, you might have some quicker success because you're maybe more systematized. But Dusty, it sounded like the only way that you could get through the chaos of that has now led to your growth is you probably had some type of end in sight, meaning like there was a light at the end of the tunnel and you just kept walking towards it and towards it and towards it. And it's almost like you had a why, which meant you could, I love this quote by Simon Sinek, or no, it's not Simon Sinek. Simon Sinek references it in one of his books. It was the author who wrote Man's Search for Meaning says, you know, he who has a why can bear any what, or bear any how. So it's like, if you know why you're moving forward, there's something at the end of the tunnel, you can bear any like mode of what you actually have to do to get there. And it sounds somewhat like your journey over the past 8 years of getting here. So if that is true for you, let me know. And then if that is true, what do you think that light at the end of the tunnel has been for you? And how could you maybe encourage somebody else who's in a similar maybe season, who's looking for that light at the end of the tunnel, and how can they find that for themselves?
Yeah, I think just I've always been super driven by the fact that I wanted to become self-employed. And so like that has just like been the driving factor from day one. Then also just like I'm super, super passionate about travel and outdoors and like just that lifestyle. And I also know that that can go hand in hand with having a successful business. I've seen it thousands of times online, and obviously not everything you see online is true, but like I know that it's possible even by watching what you guys are doing. And it seems like you're having a great lifestyle, but tied in with a successful business. So for me, that was like a major why I'm going there. And also just like optimism is like, maybe it's a downfall of mine, but like I always look at things in the grander scheme. Like, sure, you have bad days, but with really, really high optimism, and that I can do it too. So, and alongside with that is that I want to share that other people can do it too. So like realistically, that's a huge why of mine. Alongside having a successful business, I want to share like these alternative lifestyles is possible for pretty much anybody if you put the time in over that whole, I mean, go through all those hows and whats, or
yeah, I love it. Okay, so we probably should have started with this earlier in the podcast, but we just jumped into a great conversation. So I want to take us back because I want people to get a little bit more context on you and how they can pull pieces of your story and match it with their own story in order to take them wherever they want to go. So today, Dusty is living in Calgary, as you said. You're from Alberta. You're currently living in Calgary. You are an outdoor travel and personal brand. You're outdoor and travel, personal brand and commercial photographer and filmmaker. You're shooting for brands and tourism boards. You've now built yourself a business, which is an epic thing. And you've gotten the business to a certain point, which a lot of people would consider like the mecca. Your business is now a 6-figure business. And that is incredible, but you have not always been there. Let's go all the way back to the beginning, because I want to talk about how you got to that point. We just talked about a little bit about the social, but take me back. Like, you're from a farm in Alberta. When we met, you were a wildlife firefighter, and that's kind of what you said at the beginning of the podcast, where you do that for a couple months, hard work for a couple months, really great job though, and then you do this other stuff. Like, take me back to 2019, Dusty, and let's talk about how this thing really got started, because it's been a quick 3 years, if we want to say that, and it's really cool to see the difference in your lifestyle and even just like who you are from a mindset perspective. Like, when I listen to you talk, I'm like, wow, like I feel like you've changed a lot of even how you perceive yourself and perceive the world around you. Take me back to Dusty in 2019 before you were fully full-time, and give us a little bit of the story of how you got into this. And we'll kind of pick apart a few questions, I guess, as we go through this, because I think this is really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll just go a little bit further past 2019
Awesome.
because I used to be a freestyle skier, and that's kind of how I think I originally had crossed paths with Joey way back in the day. And we have some mutual friends from being in the freestyle ski world. So that is just a cool tip or fact for everybody. But then basically from freestyle skiing, I picked up a camera, started making edits, just like everybody in the US would make skateboard edits. I was making ski
Same
edits
with me.
my friends, just like Joey still does and did. But then because I had a camera, I just had started building an interest in that. I always had an interest. And then I eventually came to the end of my career, and I had a little bit of a hole that was starting to build that I knew that freestyle skiing was going to leave, because it was basically almost a full-time thing for me. Not that I was making income from it necessarily, but I spent all my time training and skiing around Canada, the US. So then I picked up my camera again and went backpacking, and that's when I really got to like drive home the fact that I love doing that. I was traveling for about 9 months through Southeast Asia and New Zealand, just shooting, and that's where I shot tons of hiking, landscape, and wildlife stuff. But when I got back, it was like, okay, I got to do something now. And then I went to school for forestry school. And that I got out of that. I worked a season in the industry there, but then I went into wildfire fighting because I knew that wildfire fighting would be a group of great people, but it also allowed me 6 months of basically in the winter time to have free time. A lot of people would go on EI, which is just like government assistance, so they could do whatever they want, but that was just not for me. So I took that time to like really focus on starting to figure out this whole world of social media and freelance stuff. And I did a little bit more traveling during those winters where I would focus purely on shooting and sharing and trying to pick up brand partnerships here and there. But as I came down to the last couple of summers of doing this wildfire fighting here in the Canadian Rockies, I was really trying to make sure that the end goal of that last summer was that I was going to have enough work to take me on and actually really start going upwards with the business. So I was focusing pretty much on my days off on shooting projects and then going back to wildfire and then working in the evenings on edits and whatnot. So it was like back to back, but I had this goal of getting out of wildfire, which I truly love. It's an amazing job and a wild, hard job, like Joey said. It was like tying two opportunities that allowed me to get to the next step. And I think just on that note is like people can work and still create a great business and then take a step away. Like don't be ashamed to work part-time and work towards your goal.
Absolutely.
But then once I got, sorry to cut you
No,
off,
you're good.
Cressey,
Go for it.
then once I got out, I was like, okay, I'm not going back. And I made it a fact that I wasn't going to go back to wildfire because it's pretty easy to show up. You get a paycheck. Like, I mean, it would be a super easy crutch to take. Oh, I'll take another year. But in my head, I was like, no, I'm going to take a step away. And that was, I believe that during that spring was when I did Creativ Rise in 2019. Or did I do another summer? I might have done one more summer, but I think that was the last summer. It might have been more than, it might be coming up 3 years of full time.
I think you went full time in 2019 because I think you went full time. Yeah, I think you went full time. Short. I think like early into 2020.
You were in your last season of it, and then you were getting out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I didn't go back after that.
Yeah. So that's 3 years, man.
I guess it is 2.5, 3 years now. So that is crazy. And then basically once I stepped out, I had my home office. We had a new place here in Calgary. Me and my girlfriend, during school, had traveled around again more. And then we started to settle in and I started to figure out this routine. I had some quite good success out of the way with some partners that I had built up during that time. And then I just continued to dive into it. And I started meeting people like Victor, who you recently had on the podcast.
I love Victor.
And focusing more on that community, which I had already started to build during those years up until that point. And then it just started going away to the races, but not really until this last year, I would say, is like, I feel that I've come into myself in the business that I really want to have in the future. And I might be taking a little bit longer path than some people in the space, but it's been with one goal in mind. And like, it's hard to kind of explain that vision to everybody, but like I'm working towards that slowly and it might take a little bit longer, but I have a grand vision in the end. And I'm still working day to day on social, working day to day on freelance projects, and then slowly expanding the business into other directions.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so many ways we can go. You were doing so many things that it's crazy to think about what you're doing now, because you could have had a bunch of different life opportunities and paths that you could have taken that maybe would have led you away from what you're doing now. But to round that all up, again, you are working full time, doing what you love. Your business is at a milestone, revenue wise. You're getting to, most importantly, the three of us share the same ethos around money. And let's talk about that for a second, because I think this is really important. A lot of people in the earlier stages, I know I thought this, Dusty, you might have thought this. We think that once we hit a certain mark, we'll be set. And for some people, that is how it works. But for a lot of us, you get into the business, money becomes something you're forced to make because it's the lifeblood of your company. It's going to keep you alive. It's going to keep food on your table, right? But it can be destructive if that's all you ever focus on. Now, I want to preface this. So this is a creative business podcast. Like Christy and I's goal, as with when you joined the mastermind, Christy and I's goal was, hey, how do we help Dusty really make this business go and make him money? It's always about making money. But why do we want people's businesses to make money? And Dusty, I know you've got a pretty cool thought on that, as you've now experienced being a creative in the earlier stages, not making much, and now you're making a great income as a creative. How has your perspective potentially shifted, or what is your current perspective on what it is like to make money as a sole proprietor, somebody working for themselves, running a business, like you said, was always a goal of yours? And how do you think about money? Talk to me about that.
Yeah, I honestly think that money is not evil. I've heard this, like it's just a way to supplement our lifestyle and create the lifestyle that we want. So like, of course, up to a certain extent, money is going to be it's going to be an enabler to create the lifestyle that you want. However, I've lived before when I was backpacking and stuff and going to school. Like I spent, I don't know, 3 or 4 years even skiing as a ski bum, basically, with making less than $30,000 and having the best times of my life. So I think I always take that sentiment into everything that I do. However, I do have pretty lofty financial goals in the future, but I'm taking it in stride and I'm living within my means and living within a lifestyle that I can create by having the freedom to do the stuff that I want, the freedom to choose the jobs that I want, but that is supplemented by making an income from doing freelance. So like, I'm super, super grateful, but I also don't think that you should have to kill yourself to have like the brand new car, all these things, if you just want to at least start out. I mean, anyways, but it's that whole thing they were talking about. Money is not everything, but sorry, I'm rambling.
No, you're good. I love it.
Yeah.
It's not everything, but it's an enabler. And I love that you said that, because if we don't see it as everything, we'll also recognize that it won't make us happy. Right. And there's all, I mean, Christy and I were talking about this the other day. We talk about this all the time. I was actually speaking about this even more recently than when we talked about this with somebody else. But I told them about the day where I woke up and I realized I had made like the same amount of money I used to make in a year in like 5 days. And I said, I didn't feel any different, which is a classic thing you hear. Yeah. And it's just because it's true, but it is an enabler that can push a certain lifestyle you want. Or if it's, in the certain lifestyle you want, maybe you like to give, or you like to, because you have more money, you can pull back on how much you have to work and you can give of your time or whatever it's going to be. It can totally change things. So let's talk about making money as a creative, because I think one of the reasons why creatives don't make a ton of money, I've been here, Dusty, you might associate yourself with being here before too, earlier on in your life. I know you've been here. When we don't have a super healthy perspective on money, we typically, and this sounds a little bit woo-woo, but it is a little bit true, we can repel the idea of making it because we're actually not viewing it for what it is, as a tool. We're viewing it as like something different than that. So let's talk about making money. So many creatives struggle to make money because the way they view money is off. And we just talked about that a little bit. Like, you need to see money as a tool, not like something that's going to make you happy or the be all end all, because it's not those things. But when it comes to actually making money, what tips do you have for somebody who's listening to the show, who's maybe Dusty back in 2017, 18, 19, back when we met you when you went through the Creativ Rise Mastermind? Like, talk to that person about, if you could give them a couple different tips, 1 or 2 tips on like how they could actually make money with their camera, make money with their creativity, what would it be?
Yeah, this is a little bit outside of directly taking income, but I think like actually pursuing continued increase of skills with your camera. So like continued education, finding free resources online, whether it's Instagram, YouTube, or other courses that are offered. Just like getting better at what you're doing is going to be the very first step, and continued throughout all of that. But secondly, I think is being very self-aware about your skill set and where that is at, and finding clients that align with that need.
Yeah.
So finding a problem within a business that aligns with the skill set that you can offer. Sure, you can always shoot up and find ways to like increase your skill set, buy a new camera based off the project. But starting out especially is like, maybe it's a local business, or it's like your uncle has a business and they have a problem just needing some simple social media photos. They don't have to be commercial grade, but you can probably do that with just a basic point and shoot, or even your iPhone to start out. So like those simplifying the overall thing and not shooting too high off the start is just to get experience. And then also, just like we said, just increasing that off the top. So whether you're sending out one pitch a week, like some people might, and set a goal for like 25 per week or 15 per week, and like dramatically increasing that. I would even say higher than that. And then getting that overall experience from doing that consistently. And I think those two together are just going to gain you the experience that you need to actually start making income, but also figuring out where you can make income from.
I love that. That's awesome. And I love that you talk about like on the small scale, like, hey, just look around, look at who you know, and just get started. And it's like that will then build. And like you're at a place now where you're working with tourism boards like New Zealand and Alberta and Jasper, all these cool places. Talk about a little bit, how did you connect with those people? How did you land some of those jobs? What's some tips if someone's like, hey, I have a local tourism board that I really want to work with. How do I even get their attention? How do I even get started?
Or the GMC deal. You're driving a brand new truck all summer. Like, how does that come to be? And what advice do you have for someone who's listening going, man, I would love to be in a position like Dusty one day?
Yeah, absolutely. I think alongside this whole conversation is just like having the long-term view. I seen this as something that I wanted back in 2019, but I didn't have the opportunity at that time, but I had the longevity and the long-term view to like be consistent in order to get to this point. So I think just having the wherewithal to like actually stick to your guns and go for that, because you're not going to get those opportunities right out the gate. But say, for example, the GMC thing, it came from, I imagine, gaining these followers because I was in a database at a certain amount of people like with followership on social media. So I was reached out by that. But more in terms of what you guys are speaking to is say that you have a local tourism board, is just like start by interacting with them. Everybody's saying this on social. You guys have talked about this so much, but like having a positive follow up, you're reaching out, following their social media page, making positive interactions. To me, I think I would say relationships are probably almost number one. Importance of social for me, for business, for all of the different aspects of my life. So building like genuine relationships. Sorry, pups barking in the background there.
Building a brand new relationship with the new pup you have. To the point where it wants into your office.
Very important.
Yeah, keep going.
So for Travel Alberta, for example, I lived in the province my entire life, and even before they started this creator community, which I eventually got invited to, but I was creating content here genuinely, and I'm super inspired by our province. I absolutely love where I live, so trying to share that in the most positive light. So it was a very authentic way for me to connect with them, share what I was doing, and that made them. We luckily have a great tourism board, and they do a lot of work with creators here, but that allowed them to find something in me that was valuable to them by doing it secondhand, basically. So I wasn't directly always pitching to them, but I was creating in a way that I would be self-aware enough to think this is valuable to them. And then I eventually came around to being able to do projects with them. And now I have a great relationship with them through business and just through friendship.
Yeah, almost. Totally. Well, it's what you said earlier. It's stacking skills, right? It's getting better at what you do. And then eventually, as your skills get stacked and your quality of what you can accomplish, that will be matched with like a quality of client. And I totally agree with that. I love how you mentioned that. And I love that you said like, hey, I just got out and I put myself out there. You went out and shot. You're trying to create the work that you want to eventually be paid for free, which is a thing that just so many people don't do, because they think like, hey, I should only create something unless I really, really want to do it that I'm going to be getting paid for. And the reality is, a brand looking at you, if they don't look at you and go, hey, I don't know if Joey would be good at that, I don't see any type of work like that in his portfolio, then why would I ever expect to get the job? But if I'm already out there shooting stuff and I'm pouring my heart and soul out into, creating stuff that I would think would align with their goals and their business objectives, and it would help them solve those things, then of course I'm going to be in a position to potentially succeed when that conversation comes around, which is exactly what you just said has brought you a lot of work. So Dusty, that's such a good answer. I love that. So what tip do you have for someone who's maybe like, well, Dusty, I'm maybe not from a really cool place that's got a really cool tourism board, or I don't know many brands. Like, what tip would you have for them to maybe just get even one step closer to being in a place where they can, be giving value to brands or tourism boards or whatever they want it to be? Like, what's your answer to that for someone who feels like they're just on the fringe and they're not as close to that as they maybe would like to, or maybe as they thought how close you were to that growing up?
I think just finding like where your passion lies and where your skill set lies, because automatically you're going to probably have relationships in those spaces that are going to allow you to like carry further than just doing cold outreach in the beginning. That's like a major thing to me. Like I don't necessarily love doing ski stuff all the time right now, but I'm a huge community of people that have been able to support me purely because I've got those relationships in that space. And so for somebody that, say for example, that you want to be a travel photographer and you live in a place like the middle of Saskatchewan here in Canada, if you don't know where that is, if you're from the USA, just picture a flat earth with grass. Basically, that's all it is. No mountains there, but there's still really cool stuff. So figuring out, I just did a trip last year out there and there's no mountains, but there's tons of beautiful, unique landscapes. So you could start with doing a weekend trip there, then saving up money to do a trip out to the Rockies. And then if your real goal is to be a travel and outdoor photographer, then figure out the steps that it takes to either become a traveler and doing backpacking trips, or to make the move to a place like Canmore or like Boulder or somewhere in the States. So like figuring out those steps, like it doesn't have to be today, but it can be part of your journey in the business. You don't have to stay in one place.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's possible. I love that, man. Well, why don't we wrap up with our two questions we always ask? The first one is, obviously, where can people find you? How can they connect with you?
Yeah, you can find me at dusty.cressey on Instagram. I do have some aspirations on YouTube, which I haven't really made a full commitment to yet, but that's my favorite platform, which I'm not showing up on, and I haven't found my voice there. So if you guys are in that type of position, a lot of us are feeling that too. Yeah, that's where you can find me on Instagram mainly for the moment.
Cool.
Love it.
I love it. And then the last question is, you've probably heard it on the show before. It's our signature question. Why should someone care enough about breaking the creative struggle in their own lives to go for it? Why was it worth it for you, and why is it going to be worth it for somebody else?
It's worth it because if you have any aspiration at all and don't at least try, I almost guarantee that it's probably going to be a larger regret for not trying than trying and failing. And even if you do fail, I bet you're going to learn a lot more along the way than if you didn't try at all. So that's my biggest thing. And then also you can create the life that you want, like have big goals and at least try to figure it out. And it's probably not going to turn out exactly how you want, but it's almost always worth it, I think.
Yeah, I love it, man. Hey, well, Dusty, from us to you and the rest of the Creativ Rise fam behind this podcast, we just want to say thanks for being on. We're super stoked on all the success you've had in the last couple of years, and specifically this year. Thanks for sharing some of the tips that have come out of that success with everybody on the show today, and I can't wait for people to get value from it, man. So thanks for being on.
Yeah, thank you guys very much. I'm still, I get so excited, and when I'm chatting in conversations, I get rambling off, but it all comes from a place of passion. So hopefully you guys can find some interesting in there.
Heck yeah, man. That's all of us. We're all just ramblers. So
exactly.
I love it, dude.
Awesome.
Well, hey, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks, Dusty.
Thank you very much.
Well, what a great episode with Dusty. He is just such a humble dude, and I love how what he talks about makes it seem like anyone can follow in his footsteps and achieve what he's achieved, which is true. And that is the whole reason why Dusty was on the show today. It's the whole reason why Creativ Rise exists, is to help you understand that you can build a world where you succeed at doing what you love. And our aim is to obviously give you the tools, tips, stories, the people, the community, the accountability, and support for you to be able to do that by focusing on the business, not just the creative. And so what a great episode today with Dusty. I love that. And I love what he talked about how you need like creative friends, but you also need like business friends, people that are willing to support you on the business side. And I just love how all of that ties into all the things he talked about that has led to his growth in the last couple of years as a self-employed individual. And his story's so cool.
Well, because you guys, as we've both known, and Dusty knows, and so many other creative business owners know, is that momentum is everything. Like if you don't have momentum in your business, you're kind of going to drop off and you're not going to be able to do the things you want to do. And one of those things is just hugely about community. Even this last week, I saw a bunch of Creativ Rise Mastermind grads up in Tahoe hanging out together, and they sent us a message like, thanks, Creativ Rise. And we're like, that is so cool, because that's the stuff that keeps the fire lit underneath your business. It's connection with other people who are like-minded, who are positive, and who want to also grow their business alongside of you. So if you're someone who doesn't have any community like that, or you have some creative friends, but it's not really like business focused, let's cheer each other on, let's go for this, you need that. And if you don't have that, we have something for you. It's called the Creativ Rise Mastermind. You've probably heard about it. It's round 10 is coming this fall. End of August is actually when
it's coming up
waitlist is getting access. So coming super fast. It's the same thing Dusty was a part of. He was in round 3 and we're on round 10 now. So it just keeps getting better and better and better. And the community is awesome. So if you're like, I don't have people like that, I don't have something that's keeping a fire lit underneath me, and I kind of feel like I'm just isolated island out here. Don't be an isolated island. Put yourself in like areas where you will grow and you will not regret it. So the Creativ Rise Mastermind is one of those places where we do that. We teach you all the things about business, not necessarily about the creative stuff, not like lighting or cameras. We talk about the stuff that actually makes you money. So you guys, it's awesome. But again, it's coming super fast. We have over 200 people on the wait list. There's usually only we take 30 to 35 people. So
35 businesses at a time.
35 businesses. So it's getting crowded.
Yeah. So if this last half of 2023 is something we really want your business to grow, then you've got to put yourself in proximity into an environment that's going to help your business grow. And there's a lot of those, but the Creativ Rise Mastermind is a tried and true method that really helps you do that in a small community, which means you get really good support in 6 weeks' time. So our goal is to shortcut you 6 years of business understanding, as Dusty mentioned, business mindset, and specifically with accountability and support, like Christy was just talking about, so that in 6 weeks you really make a huge jump in your business and you are closer to creating a world where you're getting to do what you love and make good money to do it. Dusty's example here, he's crossed the 6-figure mark, is amazing. And that's our goal, is for everybody to have a similar experience to what Dusty has had. So if that's you, all you got to do is go to creativrise.com. You can check out all the details, everything you're going to learn. You'll see lots of testimonials from like-minded people that you will be connected with. Waitlist gets access on the 23rd, which is really cool. So it's coming up August 23rd. Other than that, guys, thanks for being here, listening to today's show. Reach out to Dusty. Thank him for being on the pod. Repost anything he said that inspired you. Share it with your friends. And we'll see you next week on the podcast.
Thanks, guys.